Hello, everyone. Hattie from Riedel Communications, VP of Key Accounts. I'm here to moderate a really awesome panel on audio today. How many of you all are actually in the business of audio? Are you professionally working audio? Video?
Sorry.
It's okay. Okay. Broadcast? How many of you and more of your time in broadcast? Broadcast audio? Live event audio? Or live event, I'm sorry, in general. Live event? So we have a broadcast. Great. Okay. Let's start today. I'd like to introduce our panel. Fernando Delgado from Stickman Sound. He's a recording and mixing engineer for 30 plus years, I believe.
Almost 30 years.
Okay. Mr. Andrew McHaddad from NEP Group. He's TV production, broadcast trucks. Steve Cormier, VP of OSA International, 40 years of live audio recording. Jan Schaffner, who is from Riedel Communications Managed Technology Group. How many of you guys knew Riedel started out as a rental company? Anybody know that? Still are. Actually, for very high level profile or high profile, high level events is really what we specialize in. We don't have somebody who could just back up and rent a couple of Bolero belt packs. We don't do that. And then, of course, last but not least, we have Jeff Peterson from ATK, who is an Emmy-nominated live sound mixer and project manager for ATK Versacom, also Clear Global Company. So could you guys, Fernando, tell us about your first event that you ever worked?
One of the first events that I worked was a show called Say What Karaoke for MTV. I think maybe 99, 2000, somewhere in that time frame. And I was brought in on that one as an A2, but I had never seen a broadcast truck before that job, and it got me hooked. Here I am.
Andrew, how about you?
My first live television event was opening ceremonies for the LA Olympics in 1984. I was soldering headset connectors underneath the TV truck tongue. And that's my first exposure to a large scale event. And I just kind of gravitated towards that and ended up here with these fine gentlemen. So 40 years, 2024 would have been 40 years. Yeah.
So, yeah. How about you, Steve?
First broadcast live event was actually David Letterman's first visit to Los Angeles. The company that I was working for supplied the RF for that. So it was quite cold in the studio.
Jeff, how about you?
Probably the first live television event I did was the Jerry Lewis Telethon in like 2000 or 2001. And I was on the night shift, which you get all sorts of the weird variety acts. But that's a 22-hour long broadcast live. And it had 3 shifts of people to do it. But definitely a good way to wet my foot in the broadcast business.
Awesome. Our title of our session is Quiet Chaos. And that is the objective is everyone here that's been anywhere near anything live for broadcast or even a live event, that it is literally managing very controlled chaos. And if it's done well, the audience will never know anything that goes on behind the scenes. However, if something happens, they can have a breakdown, and there we go. Anyway, today our objective is really to talk about what's changed and how we work within the realm of audio and in the world of live, and how what technology we use, how it's changed a little bit over the years, and where we go from there. So, Fernando, we'll start with you here. When you're tasked with, I guess, looking at what has changed the most that you've seen based on your first job to today.
I would say, I guess the biggest thing that has changed just from a fundamental level is how much gear we're running into a building for a live broadcast. I worked with HBO for about 15 years, and on my first show, we probably ran 20 DT12s, which are 12-channel audio snakes, analog audio snakes, into a building, and we would have to have just a cable day just to get all of the wire to all the locations that we needed to cover. Today, we're running a couple pieces of fiber in. We're tying into the house wire if it's good. And in many cases, we'll have a building cabled before lunch. And we'll, after lunch, we build our show. So load-ins are typically just a day to be able to get all of the gear up and running, where back when I first started, we would have to have a cable day just to get the cable in.
Peter, how about you?
Well, I think what hasn't changed in the 40 years I've been doing this is the expectation of quality from the customer's perspective. They want a lot of value for what they're paying for. So in that envelope of giving them what they want, the tools have changed drastically. The ability to do it has also changed in that I agree with you. You're given less time to do more. Back in 1995, I started to use fiber to do NASCAR. And we had two straight trucks, non-expando, and that was how we did NASCAR. We had two in the compound and one in the infield for the helicopter relays. And now you need about 15 trucks to do NASCAR. But now that's gotten smaller as Remy's have changed a lot of that. So we had this spike 10 years ago where a golf event or something large like that would be, it would look like the trucks company moved everything they owned to that venue. Like it was just white everywhere you went. It's settled down a little bit with the Remy influence, but still the amount of technology and the amount of content we're delivering to the users, the customers, whether it's phone based or home or whatever, it's astronomical. The amount of content and the specialized content that we're doing now is scary. A golf tournament, 600 golf carts are rented just to manage the crew's transportation around the course. It's like the scale is just massive. So I'd say that's what I've seen happen is the scale of it has just grown.
What do you?
So a bit to Andrew's point, the fundamentals of what we do haven't changed at all. All the basic rules still apply. The need for networking and IT has grown dramatically. So for an instance, almost every show that we do at OSA now, whether it's corporate broadcast, it doesn't matter. If it's a moderate size and up, there's at least one network engineer on the show. That's their job. It's not a shared position anymore. And like Fernando said, almost every piece of gear we use and touch now has a network port and gets managed at some level. And it's just necessary now. Everybody has to have at least a basic understanding of networking and IT, and it is a specialty position now.
I think going to one of what you said about the fundamentals, ultimately we're trying to get a microphone to a listener, and it used to be a piece of copper that you could test at any point along that signal chain. And now the microphone to the listener has so many different pieces of networking equipment, digital conversions, things like that, that the troubleshooting methods have completely changed from what we probably grew up with. And if you don't have an ability to understand networks and digital audio and things like that, that's a big requirement.
Awesome. For those of you that design, all of you pretty much design the work. I think maybe Jan, you don't.
Some level.
Yeah. Are you guys? What are your top considerations for the hardware that you choose? What criteria do you use, or do you have? What would you say?
The first thing that I consider is just what are my clients' needs? what are we doing? What does the venue look like? And those two things really determine what type of gear we're using and how we're deploying that equipment, how we're utilizing that equipment to make the show happen. But ultimately, our client, we're there to serve a client, to give them what their needs are. So understanding what their needs are and understanding the venue in which we're doing those jobs, I think is probably the most critical thing for me when it comes to system design. If I can just extract that information from my client, generally I can build a system for them that is going to serve their needs. So communication between the client and myself is really, really important. So that I understand what the show is, what the process is, how are we going to shoot the show, and once I gather all that information, generally I can build a pretty good system for them.
All right. So say that question again.
What are your top considerations? How do you go about choosing the equipment, the type of equipment that you use? Just to build out the system that you know that you've got to do? What's your criteria?
I would say that it's an interesting question. I don't know if I have criteria exactly, except that it has to suit the need first. I'm not brand aligned,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not particular item aligned.
Mm-hmm.
By nature, I kind of try and find what fits, but I do have favorites. There are brands that I like. And back in the day, it was, DB Extra limiters and Clark Technic for EQs. And, there were brands that you knew you could count on for the high quality. There's phrases out there like, I never got fired for buying an X. At some point it was, a particular brand of video switcher or a particular router or a particular lens type. There were things you could always count on to work where you'd keep your job. And there were others where they were cheaper or maybe looked better, but you didn't want to risk it. So you kind of stayed with what you wanted. So that's part of our legacy as an industry, is certain things are just where we want to be. When a company like Belden, for example, buys a video switcher company, you kind of wonder, well, where's that going to take it? Where we're going to go with that? How's that going to work out for the industry? So you got to watch that a little bit. But picking equipment is about trust in the equipment. And I as a design engineer at NEP, where I develop bespoke devices for certain broadcasters, I have a mantra that I always remember, and that is, don't overdo the frosting. Make sure there's enough cake. Like the foundation of what you're providing, it has to matter, it has to be right. And the frosting, okay, there's some frosting, but too many products these days are too much frosting and not enough cake, if as a way to kind of put that into a phrase.
Steve?
One of the big things, besides what the show and the client needs, it has to align with the crew that's working the show. Because we all, I'll speak for everybody, grew up liking all the neat new toys. And all the technology that we all have now out on the bleeding edge is fun, and we all want to know and learn. But if I don't have somebody on the show that knows how to use it, the show fails. So there are times you dumb the package down a little bit, if you will, because it all has to work and all has to be successful. So you can't move technology beyond capabilities.
What's interesting about managed technologies is we don't always have, as Jan has said, that we don't always have technology to fall back on. We have to invent some of it to do what we need to accomplish. And I'm not going to get too much into a Riedel commercial here, but for the most part, it is a very unique position to have to work from. We're asked things that just don't exist, and that's where they go to work and figure it out. Jeff, how about you? What do you have?
When I'm designing a system, the probably main thing that I'm thinking about is how is this going to fail, and trying to mitigate the number of points where one event can cause it to fail. So single points of failure, somebody kicking a power cable out of a unit, if it's the wrong unit, your entire system stops working. And so that's always what's going on in the back of my mind as I'm designing something, is where is this likely to fail and what can I do to try and prevent that?
Awesome. What's the toughest event that you all have to design for? What is the toughest, most complicated process that you have to think about or consider when you're doing? Do we have a general consensus, or does everybody have a different?
Disagree. We can't talk about.
Andrew, how about you?
For me, from the broadcast perspective, one of the most complex events that I've historically done, at least since the pandemic, was the NBA All-Star Game, which, in my experience, productions that are network-based, like was until NBC bought it, a heavy Turner broadcasting sports event. Like they managed it, like start to finish, everything about it, cameras, audio, working closely with the NBA. So it was a live event designed for television broadcast. And there's an NBA game itself, which is kind of shot like a regular game, but there's also the skills challenge and the high jump challenge and a bunch of other entertainment elements. And there was a sense of, is it a live event or is it a televised event? Contending with those almost competing priorities about square footage and who gets to put the camera where and what's the audience position going to be. There was a sense of just complexity, even the language, the words that we used. The broadcasters in the truck didn't know what the live event people were talking about. When you use the word IFB with somebody that mixes monitors, they don't necessarily know that we're talking about a telephone line from a remote. And so there's some of that real head scratching that can go along. And you don't want to look foolish, like you don't know what they're talking about, but you also want to ask smart questions. So it can get very stressful to mitigate all that. But I would say the hardest things that I've ever done would be when I'm involved in foreign language or other countries. Like I was in Moscow as the audio guarantee and comms guarantee for Telemundo. So that's a Spanish customer in Russia. And the amount of dialogue about trying to solve even the simplest problem, like your left surround speaker's out of phase. How do you communicate that to anybody? It takes hours just to talk about plus and minus cables. So those are complex ones. Language, and when a network is bringing their effort to bear on a live event, can get very complex.
I'm not sure I have an answer for this one.
Steve, how about you? You've got quite a bit of.
I would say trying to anticipate all of the by the ways that never come up in a meeting. I mean, a quick example, doing a show out in Jacksonville before the Super Bowl. The show is hosts in this environment. It's a nice day in Jacksonville. Producer gets an idea. Hey, we're going to put 2 hosts on this Coast Guard boat. They're going to go about 100 yards in the water. We're just going to throw them a football, and the hosts on the boat, we need to be able to hear and talk to them. Okay. I don't know if anyone's ever experienced trying to get any sort of solid frequency information out of any government agency. Not so much.
Of antennas on the boat. Yeah.
Yes. And you ask what frequency? We can't tell you that.
Yep.
Any suggestions on what I can try? No, not really. Okay. So, by the ways are a big issue. Well, not really an issue. It's just fun.
Jeff, you have any?
On the large music award shows like the Grammys, we're usually integrating. We have the audio in the building. We have the audio that's going out to broadcast, and usually we have 20 or so bands, crews that have to integrate with us and play nice. And sometimes they bring their own consoles, sometimes they don't. But getting 20 bands on and off stage in 3.5 hours can definitely be complicated. So we try and design the system to be not just robust, but also flexible and easily reconfigured in one commercial break. And trying to do that for upwards of 400 inputs takes some planning.
I am always amazed at the halftime show, the Super Bowl halftime show, that you guys 15 minutes up and down. It's always amazing to watch how they rehearse that process. You all are definitely the leaders in how to do that, I think.
The time-lapse videos of all the carts coming on and off the field are pretty fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not your show, but it's always an amazing part. It's my favorite part anyway. I don't know, Steve kind of touched on it a little bit here, but can you prepare for the unpredictable? What do you when you walk on a job site, all hell breaks loose?
Some of it's experience. You've seen and done a lot of things right and wrong. And you just have to bring lots of things and have a good attitude about it. That's the other thing, is when said producer comes with an idea of, hey, we're going to do this, you can't be negative Nancy at that point. It's for the good of the show. They have an idea, and unless it's something that is dangerous or just you flat out can't do, you just smile and say, okay, and I need 20 minutes, and sure.
How about you, Fernando? What about you?
I agree with Steve. Having experience helps. We always try to build our systems so that they're just a little bit bigger, I guess, than what we really need. So we've got more inputs than we actually need. We've got more outputs than we actually need. We've got a little bit more gear than we actually need. So when those by the ways come our way, we're not scrambling to get what we need to the location. It's more about, okay, what do we have? How can we make what we have work for the client? And then putting that plan into action. So I agree with you wholeheartedly that, by the ways, they're sometimes the most difficult part of the day, but they're also a lot of fun, when a client comes at you and they've got what seems like a really dumb idea at the very beginning, but then once we get it into action, then, all the pieces fall into place. Producers are happy. We're happy. Everything ends up working out. I think that's actually probably one of my favorite things about being on a production, is anticipating some of these, by the way. So when they do throw those curveballs your way, it's, a couple of mouse clicks, or just grab this piece of equipment and that piece of equipment and get to it, and then deliver that quickly, so that the client can come up with their next brilliant idea.
Yeah, I'd say it is extremely satisfying to beat the customer to the bit. Like, you think, hey, that's a pretty good shot over there. I bet they're going to use that. Hey, let's run a fiber over there just in case. And the customer's like, can we? Yeah, we did that earlier. You did? Oh, that's great. Thank you. And that's how you gain their trust. And that's how they keep coming at you over and over again. So that's very satisfying when you can say, we already thought of that. That's a great feeling.
Yeah, that's good.
Very satisfying point.
Jan, how about you? Or yes, Jeff?
Yeah, I think the lessons learned in all of our early careers, where you don't have the newest gear or the best maintained gear, those lessons really stay with you when you get to larger shows and you have the whole grab bag of things that you can use. You still have the fundamentals of how to solve that puzzle to make it work. And you really learn that when you're in the trenches of a low budget show where you're set up to fail, but you have to succeed anyway.
We alluded to networking and networks a little bit throughout this discussion. There's a variety of different types, as we all know, of networks that exist in what we do. Do you have advice, preference? Multiple question here. I guess you would say guidelines with respect to choosing a network, type of networks that you run into the most. How do you, live is unpredictable, yet you've got a network that is it's very black and white on how it has to operate. What happens and how do you, I guess just from your best practices, what are you seeing out there? What are the challenges and how do you work through them? So You can answer that anyway, any of those that you want.
One of the things that I do, and I think a lot of people do that work in this space is, just because you can tie everything to one network doesn't mean that you should. And I don't. Just general practice, unless I'm working on a show that's really big and it's a requirement that we tie all of our equipment in together. I run switches for my Dante network. I run separate switches for my intercom network. I never tie them together. I keep everything completely separate so that if I do run into a problem, it's not affecting my entire show. It's easier to troubleshoot. So I've been on shows. I'll give you a really quick example. I was on a show once where we were in Las Vegas doing an opening ceremony of sorts for Britney Spears' residency. And we were tying in our Dante network. Instead of just doing an analog split like we would do on any other show, we tied in our Dante network with the people that were running the house system. And literally a minute before our show was supposed to start, I'm looking at my Dante controller, which is where we patch all of our Dante devices, and I'm watching all of my green check marks just go away. So I turn around, I look at my A2, and I say, go to front of house and see what they're doing. As soon as my A2 gets there, he sees the front of house engineer on his computer just clicking away on his mouse. He asked him, what are you doing? He said, well, I didn't think any of this was being used, so I decided to disarm it. Well, what he was essentially doing was he was unpatching everything from my console. And so, and we're talking literally 60 seconds before the show was going to start. So that was my first and last time sharing a network with somebody. I will drop an analog split, and we always run separate networks now so that I don't ever have to worry about somebody just getting curious and randomly clicking on things. So again, just because you can tie your networks together doesn't mean that it's a good idea to do it. And I just don't unless I absolutely have to.
Andrew, how about you?
When the finger at the end of the day points at me for why something didn't go right, I can't point my finger at someone else. So if throughout the day, the other engineers with the other crafts are upset with me because I'm running my own fiber, well, tough luck. I'm running my own fiber, and I know where it's patched, and I wrote the label, or my crew wrote the label, or it follows my plan. Is again, at the end of the day, you can't say, well, the network died. Well, what's my job is to get audio on the air, is to get comms up and running. And I hold that to quite a bit of accountability. And this may seem odd, but I actually consider intercom is a passion of mine, enabling people to do their work, whether it's a slow-mo person or a stage manager or a graphics operator, camera operator, doesn't matter. I'm there to facilitate them doing their job. I take their ear protection very seriously. I take distortion on the intercom very seriously. So I tend to put my hands around, my arms around a lot of that system, even though it goes against the grain. That's just how I've grown up being responsible for what I'm supposed to be responsible for. I can't go, well, it's on their network. Sorry, replay operator, you can't hear the cues. I did my best. I got to do better than that. That's what I think about networking. It's a piece of audio gear. It's not an IT department. If I'm running audio through this switch, it's a piece of audio gear. Just like a limiter or a compressor or a console or an EQ, it's a piece of audio equipment, and I'm responsible for it. It doesn't matter that it only has RJ45s on it. It's still a piece of audio department equipment that I'm responsible for.
Steve, how about you?
To tag on to what Fernando said, yes, bring all of your own equipment, no matter what you've been told. Plenty of times been burned with, oh, the venue has dark fiber you can use. Not so much when you get there. Also, know that the network that's mission critical. So the entire show can disappear with that. And people still need to know what they don't know. So don't just go into a managed switch and start playing. If you don't know, you don't know, and just get help. There's help.
Well, you have unique experiences in the fact that you've got to get network information when there's no wires, there's no cable. Is that correct? And some of your in CLGP and whatnot. How are you doing that? When you all have to get information over somewhat of a network without wires, how are you getting that information back from the sailboats to the NCLGP? How are you doing that? It's an interesting challenge where a network and transmission of audio and video telemetry is concerned. Jeff, how about you? What do you?
One of the things with our industry is protocols, and there's so many different protocols to get a signal from point A to point B now, and every connector is an RJ45, but that doesn't just mean that it's going to work when you plug it in, and having to understand the difference between Dante and AES67 and AVB and other network protocols to transport audio is becoming quite important in our industry. And you can't just assume, like you used to with an XLR, this is going to be one audio signal. You have to understand what happens after you plug in that network cable or that fiber. Perfect example is if you have a large network that's all connected with fiber, you do have to pay attention to what speed your fiber is running at. You can't connect a 1 gig to a 10 gig and expect it to just function, in addition to protocols. So that whole part of networking is upstream of the actual audio signal, but it's something that we all have to start delving into and understanding.
Although audio, once upon a time, we couldn't decide whether it was pin 2 or pin 3.
And that was a whole trade show.
When you have IT professionals on staff, I presume all of you do. What do they need to know? I mean, what makes them special or different, or what's different about what they need to know versus somebody that just works at, a telecom company or something of that nature, IT, or an internet company, an IT type person?
I think each of the protocols we deal with has certain things that it needs, or that it needs disabled in order for it to operate correctly. Things like QoS, quality of service, understanding what is multicast, what is unicast, and what that's going to do to the rest of your network. Things like that a lot of people don't even consider when they're thinking of, I'm going to put this signal into this network, it's going to come out at the other side. But something as simple as some devices are only 100 meg and some devices are gigabit or 10 gigabit. But if you have so much traffic running through your network that's not being managed correctly, you can overflow that 100 meg port. And now the guy who's on a follow spot with his networked belt pack that only has a 100 meg port is losing his comms because you put too much audio onto that network in a completely different location. And those are sort of the non-audio aspects of what we deal with that we have to understand.
Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'd say if you're getting a IT degree from a college, university, you're gonna maybe you're going for your your Cisco certification. The amount of time given to that educational process for prioritizing ultra low latency and streaming UDP content is maybe 1 day of their 2-year degree, and the rest of it is cybersecurity and email and printers. And we only focus on that 1 day. Our entire industry is that 1 day where they kind of touch on what that weird stuff is, and that's our entire life. And I think some IT professionals that come into the world are like, why? We only talked about that a little bit. That's all you guys do? Yes, that's all we do. And that's why we make all of our decisions the way we make them. And I think it takes them some time to kind of digest that and nutritionalize their thinking through that view of how we do it. That's a difference. So when you come from audio and you know that streaming is everything, real time, low latency is the goal. You approach your purchasing decisions differently. You approach your structure, your whole network is different.
Also, a network person on a show, although this panel is about audio, that person likely is dealing with every department on that show. So lighting has their specific needs, video has their specific needs, all the way down to as soon as the executive producer sits down, they have to have their internet connection working. That's often the priority.
Okay. I have a lot more questions I could ask these guys, but we're out of time. So I've got a few questions here from the audience and a comment that was just made that SMPTE delivers IP essentials training adapted to the media professional. So if anybody's interested.
Could you talk closer to the mic? We're hearing the bounce from the back of the rooms. That's right.
Okay. There's a comment that came up on the questions here. It says SMPTE delivers IP essentials training adapted to the media professionals. So it is possible that there are training programs out there. So if you all have people that.
Yep, and we've taken advantage of some of those throughout the years, and that's why our shows stay on the air. Because we study. It's a matter of being better. All of us up here, and we're only up here because we were available. By the way, we're not really any better than most anybody else.
We said yes.
We said yes, but we have endeavored to grow. No matter how good our last show was, we know that we need to be better the next show, and we need to be able to get it done. So we continuously educate ourselves. We don't give up learning. All of us up here, I'd say, are more curious than we are smart. At least that's true for me. I've worked with these guys before, and they know I'm not that smart, but I'm desperately curious. So learning, and getting better at it so that you know what's under the paint of the equipment is vital to our survival.
Is there anything else you all would like to say that maybe we didn't ask up here, or just a quick closing?
We desperately need more young people in our business.
Yes. Yes.
If you know them, send them. If you know them, train them. Make this interesting.
The show must go on should be the first thing that people are attracted to. Is that's the end of the day for us. It's 120 years ago, vaudeville, show must go on. It's still what drives everything.
I would just say, don't be afraid to fail. A lot of people I find, especially younger people, are so worried that they're going to screw something up that they don't even try. And I guarantee you that every high-level professional has a backpack full of mistakes that they've made and that they've learned from. Yes. So don't be afraid to fail. And then when you do, it's only a failure if you're not able to extract what you did wrong and how you can correct it. So if you do make a mistake, you might have a really bad day at work, but the next day get up and figure out what you did wrong and how you can not make that mistake again, because it's only going to make you stronger. It's only going to make you a better engineer. So failure is not the end. It's not the end, right? It's a day. It's a moment, to learn on how you can be a better engineer.
And learn from those failures.
Yeah.
Never stop learning.
Own your failures.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. You had an interesting, Andrew, I guess we had a discussion about teamwork. What is your opinion? You wanted to.
Teamwork. So, going back to that, idea of, the NBA All-Star, where you've got a heavy broadcast focus and an equally heavy live focus, the ability to work together as a team and to respect the needs and respect the requirements of all the other people that you're working with. Gone are the days of, oh, he's just with the TV truck, we're going to do our thing, or the broadcasters going, well, they're just with the PA company, this is how we have to do it. Those days really got to go, because we're all in the same, we're all getting it all done. And where it used to be, the audio department ran its cables and the video department ran its cables to the truck. Now it's you run the cables to the switch that's 1,000 feet from the truck and someone else owns that transport. You've got to wait your turn in line sometimes, and you have to make sure your ducks are in a row. So when you go to the IT department, you're dribbling out nonsense about what you think you know. You've got to have your ducks in a row when you have conversations with people. We're moving too fast to be out of knowledge when you're having these teamwork elements. We got to be better to work better together.
Anybody else have anything to add on that? Or I think one of the biggest changes I've seen over the years is that it used to be very, very island based, and it's just not anymore. One quick question that I think is a good one here says, are there any pieces of legacy technology that you always have available to deal with the unanticipated needs that always pop up? That's a good question.
A hardwired microphone.
I think we'll end it there. Thank you guys very much. It's been.
Thank you.